Okay, good morning everybody, and welcome to the 8th edition HealthCare 360 Summit. Thank you all very much for coming and being with us this morning. Now, as you know, the HealthCare 360 Summit, this is our 8th edition, and the aim of each summit is to bring together the thought leaders of the healthcare business, of the healthcare sector, all under one roof to discuss the pertinent issues and relevant challenges, if any, and try and overcome any headwinds and introduce more tailwinds. As you will see in the agenda, which I'm sure all of you have, we have assembled a number of leading speakers, renowned personalities, individuals of immense stature in the healthcare sector that will be presenting their knowledge, experience, and insights gathered over several years in the healthcare business with all of us this morning. We have also assembled a number of key providers of innovative solutions to various hospitals in the healthcare sector that we can all see on display at the back of the hall and towards my left side of the hall. So we have also arranged a number of meetings for all of us to interact and discover the latest and most innovative solutions. All of this is a heady cocktail that is going to be a tremendous source of inspiration and will sure open our eyes to new discoveries and new solutions for the healthcare sector and in our businesses. So, with this amazing conference that we have lined up, I'd like to take immense pride in introducing you to our first speaker this morning, our keynote speaker, Dr. Lakshmi Jagannathan, who is the CEO of the Derby Foundation. In fact, I spoke to Dr. Lakshmi a few minutes back to ask her a little bit about what her speech is about and what can the audience expect from the first presentation of the HealthCare 360 Summit. And I found out that Dr. Lakshmi is going to explain to us what are the various challenges and opportunities that particularly startups of the healthcare sector have in front of them. What are those challenges? What are those opportunities? How to identify it and how to scale it? Particularly directed towards doctors, physicians, engineers, and the like. So, without any further ado, please help me welcome on stage the CEO of the only healthcare incubator in the country, Dr. Lakshmi Jagannathan.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. It's wonderful being here, and I would say I'm fortunate to probably maybe be the first speaker, sort of, so that I'll be able to navigate the rest of the conversations today towards what I would like to present. Right? When Mr. Suresh reached out to me saying there's an opportunity like this, I was thrilled because health tech innovation in India is still way behind what needs to be done. Maybe some of the points I would like to just touch upon what is the scenario and how we could collectively work together to support maybe innovators, startups, and all the concerned stakeholders in the startup ecosystem. See, I think when I was just preparing for the talk couple of days back, I just wanted to understand what is this healthcare innovation all about, no? Because there are multiple things happening in the ecosystem and multiple innovators, startups trying to do things around what is innovation, right? India, if you see, as we are talking about, we are, I think maybe few months down the line, we should be able to touch 1 lakh startups, registered startups in the country. Out of that, around 8,000 plus are healthcare startups. And health as a sector, I think the funding for startups has exponentially grown in the last few years. Post COVID, I think people have also realizing the importance of technology, specifically digital tech, in supporting startups on enabling solutions to reach to the masses. Right. So this is one thing which is really happening. But in terms of overall, out of these 8,000 startups whom we are talking about, the percentage of startups who've really raised series of funding or scaling up is a very, very, very small number. So where are the challenges, right? So that's why I said, let me touch upon two aspects of the same thing. You know, healthcare, yes, a lot of things are happening. There are opportunities, but there are a lot of challenges. So how can we collectively maybe work together to one, identify the opportunity, see how some of these opportunities could also be work together to overcome the challenges as well. So WHO, no, their definition of WHO with regard to healthcare innovation broadly covers three interesting aspects which are very, very relevant today in terms of trying to understand what is the problem, what is the opportunity, can a solution be really built to solve this problem. The first one is in terms of demands and priorities. When somebody talks about a healthcare innovation, is there a demand for a solution? Number one. Even if there's a demand, is it of priority in that particular market which the solution is trying to capture? I think that's very, very important. See, I basically work for an incubator. I think in the last slide I also mentioned that Derby, in our journey of supporting so many startups, we have seen that one big point which most of the startups also miss is the solutions what they are building. Is it of a real priority for the customer whom they are targeting? Right? Only then it will translate to a viable business model. I think this is very, very important to be kept in mind. The second one is the solution what they are building. Is it ready to scale? I think India as a country, if you see, 90% of the targeted customers, especially for affordable healthcare, is middle class and below. And the bottom of the pyramid is really, really wide, right? So, solution what they're building, is there an opportunity or can it be really scaled? I think scalability of the solution is one aspect. Other thing also to be kept in mind is there enough market for the solution to be scaled? So, this is again a very, very important element of defining healthcare innovation. The third one is, of course, the incubation ecosystem, which is there for supporting startups. I think I've been in the incubation ecosystem close to about 15 years now. Last 7-8 years, it's exponentially grown in terms of supporting startups. Not only the incubators alone, whether it's incubators, accelerators, investors, corporates, people who are ready to work with startups, technology companies, hospitals, clinicians, a lot of things happening around this ecosystem, around this space. But again, most of them are as bubbles, but connecting these dots, knitting them together is very, very critical. I would say three important pillars as far as digitization or digital intervention for health is concerned today, right? I'm sorry, I will not be able to touch the biology. See, health is not just digital, right? It is biology, of course, right? But I'm not going to touch upon the hardcore biotechnology research or the biology research, which also enables health aspect, right? But digital, if you see, I think digital health or digital as a technology is really one which is going to touch, of course, touch all life, but also exponentially enable this impact on the ground, right? First one is, how can digitization enable the routine healthcare process in terms of, can digitization really scale up the impact on the healthcare processes which is happening in all healthcare institutions, be it hospitals or any part of the healthcare, right? Whether we are talking about automation of the process or the particular activity around healthcare, the scans or the point of care diagnostics, anything to do, right, with digitization. That's the first one. Second one is, what is also happening is lot of disruption is happening with new technologies coming in. About few weeks back, I was again a part of a startup showcase event organized as a part of an oncology conference in Delhi. I was amazed to see a lot of medical practitioners, oncologists who are talking, discussing their own case studies about how they are working with the AI experts, working with deep tech experts, trying to analyze diagnosis or what methodology has to be used for treatment. So I think there is a very strong blend of technology with the clinical aspect which is happening. But I would say it's just the beginning of what is happening, right? That's the second part. The third one is digital transformation, including all the stakeholders. I mean, today, I would say health is a very, very complex subject, starting, I would say, keeping the patient as a center of the whole initiatives around health. There are multiple stakeholders of health which have to be considered when anything around health is planned, right? Like, for example, these are the couple of stakeholders I listed. Maybe it could go beyond as well. All this has to be, again, I said, patient centric, right? Starting from the physicians and the caretakers who are more looking at doing multiple things around how patient care could be better in terms of whether it is diagnosis or clinical outcomes or post treatment care to patients. At every stage, technology is being embraced, or physicians are at least trying to adopt, try out new technologies to see how patient could have a better outcome in terms of what is happening. Second one is the patient who's looking everything at a maybe either cost optimization or quicker aspect, either in terms of time and cost, right? And the balance between the two, whether it is diagnosis, treatment, delivery of service, delivery of treatment, any of these, right? Third one is in terms of organizations itself, hospitals itself, right? Who are looking at offering better business model, adopting better business model, cost optimization. Again, maybe a tug of war between costing and the service quality which could be delivered and the experience, service experience given to patients, given to all the stakeholders. This is again a very important element to come into the play. Then, of course, there are innovators. Not all innovators get an, or I would say, get an opportunity or are keen on becoming a startup. I would say innovators slash startups, right? I think the rest of the slides are around innovators, startups, where we're talking about there are opportunities on one side, but again, a huge challenge for these guys in terms of figuring out, building viable business model, scaling. There are huge challenges as well. Then the last one is in terms of the regulatory. I think last few years, India has also picked up putting a lot of things in place, especially for regulatory, validation, pathways and all that. Recently also, I think few weeks back, for the medical devices, regulatory frameworks have been announced as well, right? So regulatory are working on seeing how patients could experience all these, in terms of treatment or technology could be brought in so that it is more safer for patients, right? So when somebody builds a solution or somebody is even looking at building a solution to solve a specific healthcare problem, multiple of these stakeholders have to be kept in mind when a particular initiative is being thought of. Yeah, in fact, there was an interesting research paper I was going through in terms of trying to understand what are the specific areas in which digital plays an impact, right? I think there are 11 broad categories, whether you talk about telemedicine or you talk about pharmacies, health management, fitness, wellness, diagnostics, post hospitalization. I didn't want to go into deeper of all of them. Some of them I've just put it there so that it gives an understanding about one in terms of opportunities. And there are at least a bunch of startups in each of these sub-segments who have been able to be successful, raise venture capital money, and then scale up. But again, it's a very, very small percentage of people who have done it, right? There's a lot of opportunity for multiple more people to do. One of two of them, probably, I would like to just go in depth as well. For example, if you say diagnostics, right? See, today, many startups I've seen they're working on diagnostics, point of care diagnostic tools, whether it is starting from early detection for, say, dengue. In fact, we had one startup who had a diagnostic kit which was working on three diseases in one kit, shorter span of time. So startups are working either on a time where it could be done faster or multiple disease diagnostics using the same kit. There was another startup was working on a low cost diagnostic kit for hypothyroidism. So there are, see, from the idea to proof of concept, there are diamond dozen innovators who are working, right? Beyond that is a challenge what has to be looked at. If you see that, so there are a lot of startups who are also seeing how AI can be used, right? How AI models can be built, leveraged for early diagnostics, and the projected market CAGR for AI is more than 50%, right? There are some of startups like Sitapal or Niramai who've also done well, raised money, but again, they're very, very small percentage, but a lot more can be done, right? Pharma, for example, I think pharma and e-commerce in pharma was one of the early movers. Maybe one of the reasons also could have been that it is less regulated as compared to devices market, right? And I think one advantage e-commerce or pharmaceutical company, e-pharmacies also had was that they were a B2C and the impact for the customer could be felt immediately, whether the discounts they had or the convenience of ordering medicines at a click of a button where it could be delivered to you, right? So that is what which helped them really scale up. Though there were hiccups in terms of the viability of the model, the regulatory issues and all that, I think they successfully overcame. A lot of they're able to build and build multiple things around that, right? For example, some of them who started only as a pharma company now are able to also bring in diagnostics also as an element into that, right? So patients convenience is one which is also brought in. Again, there's a huge market, though there are a bunch of I think about 850K is the number of pharmacies which are there physically today. They cater to only close to about 60% of the demand. So again, there's a huge market. Can solution be built? Can it be validated? This is again another opportunity, right? So what I'm seeing is, why do we say that there are a lot of opportunities for digital healthcare today? Number one, I think as Indians, with the adoption of maybe Aadhaar and especially with COVID and multiple things, I think we've seen. I think India tops the adoption in terms of digital payment. Right today, I think it tops the world. We are very good at adopting any digital technology. I think that's a big advantage for any of the technology guys or any innovators who are building digital solutions for en masse for people to adopt. That's a big advantage, right? Second one is, when we're talking about digital solutions, there's a huge opportunity for building solutions, scaling up very fast, and some of these solutions can also leapfrog systemic gaps which are there in the system. See, as I said, when an innovator is looking at building a solution for the masses or a huge scalable solution, there are a lot of systemic gaps in terms of adoption, business model. See, I was talking to a startup who actually started with a cardiac solution for primary healthcare center, right? I think after it was an initial, I mean, I would say initial few years, he struggled to figure out, because he was literally struggling to find out who's the guy who's going to pay him for a solution, right? After a few years, because the founder was mature, had a lot of expertise working in the ecosystem, he figured out a very smart business model. And now if you see, his solution is now positioned as a insure tech solution and not as a health tech solution. I think figuring out these models also is very, very important for the founder as things are built on the go. But that's what I said. If there are systemic gaps, understanding how these systemic gaps can be overcome, and I would say pivoting, but trying to figure out so that it can be scaled up at a faster pace of time. The third one is when, as I said, affordable is a huge, I would say, opportunity in India. Not only India, see, many startups I've seen are building solutions for India, but quickly scale up to the world. One more example I would take is of a startup who's built a solution for diabetic neuropathy. right? A point of care diagnostic device with a probe attached, which can quickly detect the extent of neuropathy damage in the feet. After quick validation and fairly good customer base in India, now he's applied for FDA and looking at market overseas as well. So most of these NCDs are global. It is not pertaining only to India, right? So if somebody is able to build quickly, ramp up, validate a solution in India, they can also look at overseas market. Now reverse is also happening. In fact, I'm personally mentoring a couple of international startups who are looking at entering Indian market, right? They say India is a huge market, one in terms of the size, population, and middle class who can also afford to adopt some of these technology solutions. So many startups are also looking at entering the Indian market, right? So this is again an opportunity for our own startups to see whether they could work with overseas startups and see synergies as well. Then again, as I said earlier on, there's a very strong mandate from government to push the startup agenda. I think from last, I would say 8-10 years, be it incubators or Make in India initiatives or startup policies, lot of things are happening on the ground. See, I myself am I would say a testimony to the fact that as incubators, we have exponentially raised money from multiple government bodies across the country and the state as well. And 90% of this funding which comes to incubators is meant to be given to startups. See, today there are, I would say, funding for somebody who aspires to be an entrepreneur. There is, I would say, a fellowship to a prototyping grant to a, I would say, seed fund to a pre-series A fund. There are avenues for raising money through incubators. Some of them are equity based, most of them are grants also. So for somebody who wants to innovate, try out and validate, I think you would say it's the perfect time to be in the country today, right? Second one is Ministry of Health also has multiple initiatives around healthcare. I think few years back, BIRAG did a program with NASCOM where select startups were identified, supported with funding, and funding was given to deploy the solutions in the community, right? So there are schemes like this which are also available where startup after building the solution can also deploy in the community, get a feedback, fine tune. So end to end there are opportunities available, right? Then of course, as I said, it's a very vibrant ecosystem. See, we as an incubator, if you see, I think when we started in 2015-16, we were more sector agnostic. 2018 onwards, we have really narrowed down into healthcare. Having gone into healthcare, I think last 4 years was an eye-opener for us. Because today, what is health? Health tech also means pharma tech. Health tech also means nutraceutical, nutri tech, I would say. Health tech also means insure tech. So there are multiple allied areas which also come into health, right? That is one opportunity. Also, when we started going deeper, we realized at least about 25-30 investors with whom we work very closely, they are only focused around health, right? So there are enough opportunities as well. Another 5 minutes at close. Yeah. I think maybe this is the last line. So, what are the challenges for healthcare startups? See, it's not as rosy picture as I painted, right? So, every opportunity, I mean, opportunities and challenges are two sides of the same coin, right? So, healthcare, especially, one is a long gestation time. I was talking to some entrepreneur a few days back. He said, earlier people used to say 5 years, 6 years. Today, somebody has to commit at least 15 years of their time for the startup to become really commercially viable and scale up, right? One is a time frame, but till this 15 years, how do they sustain? How do they validate? How do they scale up? There are a lot of challenges, right? Fundraising, especially in the initial years, is a huge challenge. Idea to POC is easy. What after POC, right? Many of them, I think, I would say the fatality rate for startups itself is around 90%. Healthcare startups, it is close to 98%. Many of them die the valley of death. So how do we make sure that they sustain and then grow up? Again, regulatory, I was talking to one of the person here about regulatory, right? India regulatory is complex, right? Very less of clarity. Of course, things are slowly falling in place. How do you understand? I think it's very important when somebody is innovating from day one to understand what kind of certification I need, what kind of regulatory I need, so that it reaches the market at the end of the day. And they have very restricted access to upstream companies, right? What do I mean by upstream? I think in the last slide, So way forward, how can we see, can we work together? Can doctors and technologists work together to create companies, which is what we are trying to do in a very small way in what we're trying to do, right? See, out of the 150 startups we have supported, at least about 15 are medical doctors. And now we are, from Derby Foundation, we are now reaching out to hospitals, reaching out to clinicians, say, can you give us problem statements? We will identify technology guys who will build a company, who will build a solution. Can you co-create solutions? See, co-creation again is a very good opportunity both for clinicians, technology guys, corporate companies. Can they work together to create solutions? When the solution is created, maybe all of them can have jointly stake in taking it forward, right? Co-creation is where incubators like us are willing to enable this whole process of co-creation for the ecosystem. Now, that's what I said. So, can corporates open up and say, these are the areas of, see, for us, we want to do health. What in health? Can somebody help us define the mandate for us? We will work to your mandate so that at least there is a way forward for the startup, to reach the market, right? Again, no, most of the startups find it very, I would say, sorry for using the word, find it very sexy to say affordable healthcare, because it is not just one more word in the pitch deck, right? Affordable healthcare cannot happen with the government support, because you have to sell to primary healthcare centers, sell to government hospitals. Even before selling, you'll have to validate, work with the clinicians. That is a big roadblock. So can government at least mandate saying so much of percentage of time has to be spent to work with the innovators who are creating solutions for the rural masses? These are all interesting models. I think we are open to explore and execute with all of you all today. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Is it? Questions, comments? Because I always say, always keep roaming with the L board, because the ecosystem is growing, so we are always ready to learn. Yeah,
Any
thank
questions?
you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Lakshmi, for showcasing the various initiatives that you have done to improve the startup ecosystem, healthcare ecosystem of our country. It's very commendable, the various initiatives that you've taken. And one thing that really resonated with me during your presentation was your focus to identify innovative technologies that will enhance the efficiency of the startup procedures. And it so happens, that our next topic also delves a little bit deeper into this very topic of enhancing the efficiency, the energy efficiency specifically, and making hospitals more sustainable. And our presenter of this very important topic is Dr. Vijay PV, who's a partner of Integra Ventures. Integra Ventures has been our partner for the HealthCare 360 Summit from a very long time, and we value your support very much. So please help me welcome on stage Dr. Vijay PV.
Good morning, everybody. I'm not a technical person, but I would love to speak on this particular topic as a hospital planner. So I have been in planning industry for last 15 years. I would have been part of more than 50 to 60 hospitals, which is planned and which is running. And presently, I'm part of a venture called Integra Ventures. So we are a consulting company who do turnkey hospital design from planning to execution. So coming to the topic, my topic is on energy efficiency and sustainable hospitals. So basically, I'll not get into the technical part of it, but as a hospital planner, for us to understand what we need to consider in the design or what we need to look at when we are planning a hospital is what I would like to take you around. So three things we will be discussing. One is what is a major design consideration, then resource utilization. What are the two major resources? Your electricity and water are the major things in the hospital where you have chance to reconcile things and stuff. And lastly, what is the takeaway from my side, what I would like to give it to the system. So always this is one of my favorite slides I use in most of my presentations. One is you have three parts to any hospital. One is you have your infrastructure. Second thing, you have your systems and process. You have your human resources. So always when we plan, I keep insisting, either my team or the clients or anybody, if you go wrong in planning, next 30 to 40 years, you have to live with that pain ever. It may be a small mistake, but again, breaking and redoing it is very difficult. So even if you have to spend 3 months more or 6 months more during the planning stage, it is worth spending on. If you're doing a greenfield project or even a brownfield, or even today's scenario, if you're upgrading a hospital, please do work on planning, and please respect the respective consultants or the knowledge people who can bring value to your table. It may be a small hospital or a big hospital, but a technical person would add a value. So I think the next topic we have it on the hospital planning. They would be adding more of it on that. So that's one of the key thing. So second thing is, always when systems and processes are not up to the mark, it's it's a bit difficult, but you can easily change over. So if you have gone through most of the things in the hospital, if your IT system, if you're migrating from one to other, you would know the pain, how much time and efforts and stuff it would take. So any mistake would cause you a lot. I just wanted to give you an example on that. And human resource always, training and efficiency will always give you a good result out of it. So factors influencing your good design, especially when it comes to energy efficiency and sustainable hospital, I just wanted to plan. So when it comes to a greenfield project or a bigger project, always there is a science of heliography and skyography, which most of the time you can use, where your architects, your planners plan your hospital in such a way that they map the sun movement or the shade which falls on, understand where is the maximum heat load coming from, which surface of your hospital should have more exposed windows or light and which shouldn't have. So these are the things from basic your concept or your what we say massing or master planning, your energy efficiency can be built into the system. So that is one of the thing. Second important thing when we talk about zoning. So when it comes to energy efficiency, zoning is very important, because you will understand once you are running a bigger hospitals or running a hospital, if you have badly planned your vertical movement, your horizontal movement, the resource required to move manpower, material or thing from one place to other, even a simple thing like pumping your water or your HVAC, positioning of your OT or positioning of your horizontal movements and stuff is very important. Once you start splitting critical areas into too many floors, you end up using more energy, or splitting the what we say sensitive areas into many parts. So these are the things which you need to consider when you are zoning. And also when it comes to zoning, most of the people fail to allot good space or the decent required space for your MEP services. That is very key, because always once planning is done and then the MEP consultant is involved, you end up putting things in different places, or you try to seek a solution where you want to compromise on the space, because you have eaten up most of it for your clinical requirement. So that plays a key role in your zoning kind of stuff. Vertical stacking we discussed. Then the other important thing is facade and the skin which you would use, especially depending on the hospital location. It is in a high temperature area. See, the skin or the location treatment is not same for a building which is in Bangalore versus which is in Chennai versus which is in Delhi, which goes through extreme different weather and stuff. So a good amount of material which would be spent. I think our next speaker would be talking on the material. That also gives you a lot of benefit on energy conservation. So that is very important. The next thing is insulation, maybe your terrace insulation or even the wall insulation, depending on your output from your designer or from whatever the softwares they use for LEED or IGBC. A good material selection would also impact a lot on your HVAC efficiency and running there. The next thing is automation. I'll talk to I will explain benefits of it in the next slide. So basically, what and all systems you can automate, how well you can use the BMS, because today BMS is a tool which will save a lot of energy for you. And lastly, even though you go for a lead or a IGBC certification or you don't go, I would suggest everybody to run through that process so that you will get a lot of insights of what and all energy conservation or the green building kind of concepts which you can do in this thing. So coming to other major part when it comes to efficient hospitals, there are 2 or 3 things which usually we speak about: electricity, then it is water, and that is manpower. So electricity, we have different sources. It is from your electricity board, you have a DG, and you have a UPS thing. So there is also a fact that we need to understand the per unit consumption energy cost when it comes to EB versus your DG versus your UPS is almost 1:2:3. So the right utilization of power is very important. Unnecessarily using a UPS power or stuff usually doesn't give you a very efficient operational system and stuff. So if you see typically the energy consumption of a hospital, you have majorly 50% of energy going into HVAC system. Then 15 to 20% will go into your lighting system, and the other 30% into your machineries, equipments, and stuff. So these are the opportunities which you need to work on, which will give you a good energy saving mechanism as you go ahead. Then we'll discuss on that quickly in the later slides. Next thing is a water. Again, water is becoming a scarce resource in most of the metros today. How well are you going to use it? Your rainwater conservation system. And also we need to understand cost of your water conversion, water treatment, or using it. So again, your WTP treatment cost is there, your RO treatment cost is there, your secondary RO treatment cost is there. And the biggest resource or asset in most of the hospital is your STP treated water. How well and efficiently it can be utilized. For example, if you use it for your cooling towers, it gives you a better efficiency. You have a better recycling. In the places where you use more of your DG generators and stuff, when it is cooled over water-cooled towers, the efficiencies goes up. So these are the opportunities which you can look in at recycling or utilization of water and bringing down your cost and the thing. And the third important thing always we forget or do a mistake is hiring a very competent engineering team. You do invest on a very good system and stuff. With own my eyes, I have seen in few of my projects where they don't pay a good salary or they don't bring a good technical manpower, especially in the engineering services, then you start compromising on a lot of things. So the hiring a competent person increases your efficiency. So in one of our project in Chennai, which is a 400-bed hospital, we have an efficient BMS which is managed by a very efficient technical person. So every month the analysis which he throws up and the kind of energy saving he brings in. So when we planned on that hospital, we actually, especially for HVAC, we went for a very hybrid system, which is a water cooled and a air cooled. For a kind of Chennai environment, everybody suggested air cooled may not work well, or operationally, the operational CEO or the person were insisting we don't want water cooled because maintaining it, leaks and all those stuff is a issue. But today, after using that hospital for 4 years, if we see the analysis of the data, my engineering team there exactly knows during which season I need to run air-cooled chillers, which season we need to run water-cooled chillers, even in the day and night, which has to be done. So that improvisation, they are feeding it into BMS system. So this has bought us close to 4 to 5 lakhs of saving of energy into the bill. So that efficiency can be bought in at that scale once you start implementing. Second thing is staff training. Always there is attrition in the hospital. Whenever the second team comes, most of the things are not transmitted to them. So always have a very good induction thing where the staff are trained so that your BMS system or your energy management system are taken care. Then the third thing is, please do not neglect on preventive maintenance, which costs you a lot. So quickly, I'll take two scenarios for a new hospital versus an existing hospital, what and all we can do. So this is my takeaway, which I would like to give. First thing is, when you're planning a new hospital, there's something called as a DBR, design brief report, which is done. So I would recommend everybody to understand the complete DBR, question every technology or everything which is put, try to compare with the industry best practice on energy consumption per bed, water consumption per bed, cost per bed, or cost per engineering services and stuff, and thoroughly understand what kind of system would suit you well. See, always consultants try to plan for 100% occupancy, taking every parameter into consideration, but mostly hospitals take 5 to 6 years to reach that. So every time they say initially you don't need so much, do we really need, can we cross cut and stuff? But once you have a detailed DBR, once you understand, you can do the phasing of systems, how many chillers you need to add now, what you can add later. So once you have this design built in your thing, it gives you a lot of efficiency or flexibility to handle things very easily. Second thing, I would say BMS is a must today. It is not a luxury. It is a tool which you need to invest and also learn how to read BMS reading and incorporate BMS into your monthly review, which will help you to understand why energy consumption is high or low in particular month, or is there any system issue, or is there anything which has to be taken care. So BMS, even though it is slightly costly, in most of the projects, the BMS ROI is in first 2 years or 3 years. So it's a system worth investing. Third thing, we discussed about the training. So basically, BMS is the main thing which people have to learn. So whenever you have a contract with the thing, so you need to extend 1 or 2 years of their service contract, where they train your people or train your staff to read and analyze the data. So that's very important thing. And that's the thing. So coming to existing hospital, what can be done? First thing, to have a very efficient hospital, means to understand the energy efficiency. If you have not got an energy audit done, please get it done. You will understand where, sorry, where you are leaking, or where you are spending more resources and stuff. So based on that, a corrective action can be taken. Second thing is, the design audit has to happen. Once your energy audit gives you enough insight, you need to do a design audit to see certain things has to be changed. Is it worth investing or upgrading and stuff, which will again help you in the energy efficiency. Third thing is, please try to see BMS or automation. Simple automation like at least having your level controller at your water tanks, understanding things where pumps don't overrun or you don't have leakage and stuff, which can be bought in, which saves a lot of energy plus resources and stuff. Simple things like automating your external lighting, facade lighting, or street lights with the time meter. Those are the small steps which you can start taking, so that there's a huge energy conservation which would happen. And third, the other thing is right upgradation. So always for a running hospital, upgradation, they feel it's a huge operational cost or anything. For that, say for example, we were reviewing one hospital in Bengaluru, which is a 150-bed one. So suddenly doctor called 10 days back and said, our OTs have become too hot. We are not able to function. So last week, if you see, Bengaluru temperature had gone very high. So the systems were not efficient, but they were managing it before. But this time, when all OTs were running, they realized that it is not. When we analyzed deeper, we realized that it was underplanned. There was no return system within the your OT thing. And the worst part there was their chiller, which was 100 TR, was functioning at only 75 or 80 TR. They never had done a preventive maintenance or what could have been done. So when it was a peak summer, they realized that these systems failed, or this is where they are causing. So always an energy audit or a design audit keeps you to rule out all those issues. Then the last thing is, I would suggest we always get on to a renewable energy. So most of the hospitals, depending on your bill today, you have an option to buy renewable energy with just changing your one of the electrical panel. So this will help you to bring down your cost substantially. If I'm not wrong, I think the renewable energy which is available is at 4 rupees or 5 rupees versus your EB energy which is at around 8 to 10 rupees for commercial thing. So bigger projects, when you have a sizable electricity bill, the renewable energy source is one which you can look in for conservation. Yeah, lastly, this is my last slide. So again, most of it I've tried to summarize. To have a sustainable hospital architecture, we need to build something which is able to sustain future requirements. So basically, we had a discussion on evidence-based. So we need to really take consideration of all parameters when we design. We need to look into operational efficiency of the thing. Always plan that hospital can function at 25, 50, 75, and 100%. Let your system support accordingly. So then also understand the morbidity pattern which the hospital would like to treat or is in that region. So if it is more intensive care thing, your planning and stuff would be different. If it is more daycare kind of stuff, it would be different. So the morbidity pattern is very important. Then adaptability and flexibility, having your N+1 configuration, how you can upgrade easily, having a lower configuration initially and changing it after 4 to 5 years, which is more cost efficient and energy efficient. Those kind of parameters which you have to look into. Technology, cost effectiveness, then climate change. For example, we were trying to plan a hospital in Vijayawada. So when we asked what is the temperature we need to take, Ashtray said 43 degrees. But the client started saying in summer, in at least 1 month or 2 months, we reach 48 to 49 degrees. So this may go up by another 1 or 2 degrees in next 10 years. So what are the kind of system which you need to plan? So that's very important when you consider the climatic changes. What happens when there is a flooding situation? What happened in Chennai? So what kind of systems you need to put? Where do you want to put? How energy efficient you can be on those things? Then stakeholders' responsiveness. We need to convince the investor or the key stakeholder what is the importance of energy efficiency and what is the impact on your ROI. So that makes your decision making very smoother. Then emergency preparedness, and so that would be all your major takeaway for your sustainable design. Thank you.
Thank you. In the interest of time, we shall reserve the questions for maybe during the networking session or sometime later on in the conference. Right, so there are a number of interesting points that you brought up on water efficiency, electricity efficiency, energy efficiency. It so happens that all of this will be discussed in greater detail in our first panel discussion, where we're going to be talking about designing a sustainable and efficient hospital in the best possible way. So this topic will be discussed in much more detail in just about 10 minutes' time. From now until that panel discussion, we have a very interesting topic from a very interesting speaker. Our next speaker is Mr. Anand Swaminathan, who's the Director of Healthcare and Airports at ADM Design. And very interestingly, the topic of this presentation is healthy materials. Not strong materials, not new materials, but healthy materials. Now, what exactly is healthy materials and how is it different and what is so innovative about it? Let's find out more. Please help me welcome on stage Mr. Anand Swaminathan.
Good morning, everyone. So, as our anchor briefed it, today we are going to talk about the healthy materials. Like, I'll be going on for an interactive session also, more than a monologue or a one-sided presentation. So, the topic for today is healthy materials. Which is So it's a famous statement called "We shape our buildings and thereafter they shape us." It's one of the famous quote by a former UK PM by Winston Churchill. How is it shaping us once we start living in any of the buildings for that matter? So this, as a profile, it's a house. But if you look at the details of it, it's all nothing but the human anatomy as you could see it. So building a healthier life, it's for all of us. Like The way how we say, the moment we get into our house, wherever we are walking in out or coming out from after a long day, time spending outside, we find our comfort level only in our homes. But not only in our respective houses, we expect the same comfort in our office or in a restaurant or in any retail outlets or whenever we go for a vacation in any of the results. Like any building, as we know, we expect it to be sustainable. It should be green, zero carbon, without any emissions, and at the same time, net zero energy, or at the same time, high performance in terms of like from a builder or from an investor perspective. It should be high performance. It should be longevity. It should be durable and other things. But are you aware of, is it healthy or not? Let's get into the next slides. See, as I was talking about, when our buildings are healthy, so we are also equally healthy. Like, we typically spend about 10% in an outdoor environment where only air is polluted, whereas the remaining 90% we spend in our office, home, institutions, or in a mall, or in a hospital at the end of our life, or whenever there is a need for us to visit a hospital. But all these buildings, you believe it or not, are completely filled with a lot of toxic chemicals or materials, we can say about it. These creates a lot of dangerous health effects, what we call as a silent epidemic or a slow killing. How do we know about it? Well, I'll brief you in the subsequent slides. Like, building products won't harm us. Are we sure about it? We are not, because we don't know about the construction materials that we use about it. Like, typically we as architects or engineers or builders, we are sure about what are the materials, its composition, its ingredients, and the contents of the raw material used. But are those materials really healthy for us? Typically these materials are chemically processed or coated or treated and bonded together. These chemicals in all these building materials are typically considered as an invisible greenhouse gases, and they are equally harmful. In fact, the buildings or chemicals used in these building materials are not at all tested for their impact on the health life. So well-being starts when we start to know about what are we building with. Like, healthy environment starts with the healthy choices of the building materials. Like, there is a lot of chemical composition starting from the concrete to carpet, and lot of hazardous ingredients. Even most of the manufacturers doesn't know how about these compositions in all the building materials. Like, what is healthy material, if anyone is aware of it? Sorry, it's there in the slide by that. Okay, that typically doesn't emit any chemical or toxic substances. At the same time, it is being used as a well-being for the humans and the end users. There are a lot of agencies and organizations which declare what product is healthy for any occupants or end users. In fact, these are the agencies or organizations we can talk about it. For example, in Google, I can say about it. In all the healthy materials that is being used in construction of a building for Google purpose, it's completely been tested for the healthy impact of the end users. In fact, they have an organization called Portico, where all the architects who design Google buildings have to register within it, input all the materials that is being used into it to find out whether the materials are healthy or not. So that is a kind of stringent system that they follow it in Google, wherever the buildings are built all across the world. And another one is called as a health product declaration. If you get into the websites and find it out, what are the materials and what are the chemicals that is present in this will show about the chemical compositions in all these building materials. So typically any material that we choose, first we see whether it is resilient, high performance, durable, how long it is stretchable, and what is the life of the product. Then we think about the ergonomics and the injury prevention of the end users. Then we think about the health and well-being. This is a process that we typically follow in a developing country. Whereas in a developed country, what they see is first the material is health and well-being for the end users. Then they think about or see the ergonomics and the injury prevention. Then they talk about the performance of the material. So typically when we talk about the material intoxicants, I'll just show about it. This is a good looking sofa. We see it is expensive, more durable. It's a vinyl fabric which we typically use in our villa houses or apartments for that matter. See, a typical size of this sofa contains about 956 grams of flame retardant chemicals. Flame retardant chemical meaning it's a composition or an additive material that basically delays or prevents the spread of fire. These are primarily used in fabrics, wood, and textiles. So these flame retardant chemicals that is being used, for example, if a pregnant mother, if it even crosses through the placenta, and even the babies are born with flame retardant chemicals in their bodies, and typically when the baby is born, by means of whenever the baby cradles in the the crawls on the floor, due to a hand-mouth situation, all the chemicals that has been emitted from these sofas or the materials that we use in our houses are getting into the stomach of a baby. So typically a sofa I was briefing about, it emits a lot of gaseous materials and it settles into the dust and it has been ingested into the stomach of a baby. See, next topic is about the plastics in building materials, because typically plastics we use across all materials in our day-to-day life. And this increases the use of the flame retardant chemicals, for example. Typically the plastics, how we use it is the TV cases, the baby products, cable jackets, these are day-to-day products we can say about it. So this we can't avoid it in our life. Yes, it's completely inevitable to avoid it. And second thing is talking about, this is a kind of a sofa ad that has been published by one of the sofa company. Like we are looking out for a comfort level in the sofa and not the cancer through that. I'll explain it in the subsequent slides about how the PVC or the plastic materials talks about or increases the presence of carcinogenic cells in our bodies to increases the exposure of cancer and other things. Talking about the vinyl flooring, so typically we know in hospitals we use vinyls mostly in ICUs and as well as in OTs. This is mostly affordable, durable, and it is long lasting. It does not consist any stains provided it is cleaned very frequently. And the kind of toxicants it's present in materials, maybe doctors can also vouch the kind of toxic substances it typically emits. Basically it emits phthalates, asparagines, which are not good for an endocrine system, or basically these are considered as respiratory toxicants. And there are alternatives for that. Typically rubber we can use it. Obviously we can't use rubber in an OT or in an hospital building or in an ICU for that matter. We have linoleum, we have marmoleum, which are made from a biodegradable material, and these are fire retardant as well as it comes with an acrylic coating, and occasional waxing can increase the life of the product. When you talk about the upholstered furniture, the advantages are it is durable, it is easy to clean, but it kinds of, sorry, I think the slides are repeating them, right? Yeah. So talking about the alternatives for the upholstery, we can talk about it. It is low in VOC, it is antibacterial, it is free of PVC and chlorine, and plasticizers are not being used over there, and any ozone depleting substances are not being used in the polystyrene, polyurethane for that matter. So this I was briefing in my previous slides about the organizations that talks about the materials that are toxic free or chemical free in that. For example, some of the architectural firms that follow a healthy material in their buildings is Perkins and Wills and Smith Group, and some of the other organizations or other companies that they have one of their products. It's not all their products are healthy, or toxic free or chemical free. Some of the products are toxic free. Obviously, those materials are costlier than the regular ones that we typically buy or that we typically use in our hospital buildings or in any of the buildings for that matter. So these are some of the products or some of the companies that uses their products or which are chemical free or toxic free for that matter. Talking about the PVC and its toxicants, what is not, and in fact, a lot of government organizations or governments are making an awareness not to use PVC or less in terms of using the PVC. Like we typically know PVC is extensively used in all lot of variety of building applications because it's high in low cost, durable when compared to any other products. Typically PVC, as we know, it's a polyvinyl chloride, it's basically the full form. How it is extracted, how it is mixed, how it has been used, we'll come to know about the subsequent, we can discuss in the subsequent slides. Typically these PVC or aquatic toxins, it emits a lot of asthmagens, toxic chemicals like carcinogenic cells, and it is causing a lot of eye irritants, gene mutations, and mammalian toxicants, and PBT, what we call as persistent bioaccumulative toxins. It's basically our cells in the body gets used with that kind of toxic things, because let's say I live in a house for 10 years or so. Let's say a paint is being used into that, which has got more of VOC components. My cells in my body gets used with it. That means it is becoming bioaccumulative for that matter. As we know, PVC is completely emitting a lot of toxic substance throughout its life cycle. From its extraction for the workers, during the manufacturing, it pollutes the earth, and even the workers are being affected due to that. During its usage, the occupants are getting affected, and during its disposal, it is creating a lot of hazardous pollutants for that matter. So this is a typical extraction process of a PVC. It's basically a natural gas and a petroleum where we get the ethylene, and obviously from the seawater or salt water we get chlorine. When it is getting mixed, we getting a compound called vinyl chloride monomer. There also it is an emission. During the additives to make it is completely durable for usage into the building products, there also it is emitting a lot of toxic emitting substances. In fact, this VCM is a major cause for carcinogenic cells to impact the human health at a smaller amounts. So these smaller amounts of VCM or carcinogenic cells accumulates, and then maybe the doctors can even brief about it, how the cancer cells are being formed in any parts of the body for that matter. So in fact, in 2019, the worldwide PVC manufacturers have emitted approximately 514 billion milligrams of VCM, vinyl chloride monomer, into air, whereas that OSHA, Occupational Health and Safety Hazard Administration, says only 2.6 milligrams of cubic meter of air can be released on an 8 hours in a day. Whereas what is the kind of the emission by the worldwide manufacturers is this much, 540 billion milligrams of VCM into air. As you know, PVC is typically thermally stable, and same time it is self-degradable in ultraviolet light, that is by means of sun rays. And it is rigid and flexed PVC stabilized. Typically when a PVC is completely stabilized, a material called, or an additive called plasticizers has been used. All of us know, or at least on the technical side, maybe I can say about architects and engineers, builders might know what you mean by UPVC windows. Maybe everyone will talk about, yes, UPVC stands for unplasticized polyvinyl chloride. So typically why we use PVC windows is because it is an additive called plasticizer is not being used in that, so that it becomes thermally stable. That is the reason we use UPVC windows. The moment you use a plasticizer into that, then it becomes completely thermally unstable. Yes, there are alternatives to it, because let's say when we are back in 80s and 90s, we have not used extensively these UPVC windows. We would have used maximum wooden windows or steel doors or steel windows for that matter. So UPVC penetration has gone that much in the past 20, 30 years, we can say that. In fact, to make it more stabilized against the heat from the sun, we use lead or cadmium, which is completely hazardous for that matter. So the kind of toxic it emits is in phthalates, which creates a lot of side effects like early puberty, breast cancer, and undescended testicles, prostate cancer. The kind of occurrence or the number of cases the healthcare industry or doctors can say about it, how many number of cases they are facing it on a day-to-day life, on the kind number of cancers we can talk about it. When we talk about the disposal, so that is the final, the life cycle of a PVC material, what we can talk about it. 80% of the chlorine that flows into any municipal drains are completely or into waste incinerators. When, for example, when typically a PVC material is completely combusted, or when it is completely combustion or burnt, we have a dioxide, a product called hydrogen oxide or carbon dioxide or hydrochloride for that matter. The rare reality is we don't get dioxins as a byproduct, because this dioxin is completely non-toxic, you can say about it. So alternative to the incineration is landfill. Obviously, when we do a landfill, when we do a plastic dump or a landfill, let's say about 30 or 40 kilometers away from Bengaluru, a lot of side effects of those particular villages will be an effect out of that. That is the reason a lot of revolution happens in that wherever we do a landfill for that matter. So when we talk about the recycling of it, for example, an aluminum can, which is a non-PVC material, it can be recycled to an aluminum can, but it will result in less in terms of weight. But whereas aluminum or whereas in PVC, we can't do a recycling, we can only downcycle that. A PVC flooring for that example, when we do a downcycle of it, it being converted into a traffic cone. That means a plastic that is worth for manufacturing a traffic cone. It can't come back to the same material or the same form for that matter. In fact, wherever the plastics are being burnt or decomposed or downcycled, we can say the entire world dumps into a country called China. I'm not talking about any bad about the country. That's the reason we see a lot of byproducts from China. Let us say a toy which says 3 plus or 5 plus for that matter. We know, oh, the toy is meant for a baby who is more than 3 years old. It is not the case. The byproduct that is used for that is not worth for a baby less than 3 years should not be using that. That's the meaning behind 3 plus or 5 plus that we call across. Because the additives that is being used, it's a downcycled material from another PVC material which is being converted into a toy. And in fact, developed countries are dumping their PVC waste materials to developed countries are dumping their waste materials to developing countries like China and us. Alternate for PVC, when it comes to building materials for that matter, we have a lot of materials. Maybe during the networking session, we can discuss about it because time is a constraint for that matter. Talking about a few toxin products that we typically come across in our houses. I just listed only 3 or 4 over there. Outdoor, we talk, oh, air is a lot of pollution and all. Indoor, boss, everything is polluted for that matter. In fact, a lot of materials, like it creates a lot of toxic and ingredients or toxic chemical substances, which creates and gives allergies, skin disease, breathing difficulties, neurological disorders, cancers, be it for breast or mammography, what you call prostate or brain cancer for that matter. Paints, we talk about typical architect engineer talk about, oh, my paint should be not be more than 25 grams of VOC per liter of paint. But this VOC typically when we paint a new house and then we wanted to walk in and then we keep all our doors and windows open. The reason being all the chemical substances that has been gone into the paint should evaporate into the air. But indirectly we are polluting the air also for that matter. The side effects, asthma, sinus, neurological disorders, and cancer, and lower intelligence levels in the children for that matter. Yes, there are alternatives, but for example, some of the companies I listed it down. Dulex, BCF stands for British Coatings Federer. Not all their products are PVC free or VOC free. Some of their products, yes, those products comes with the cost. And carpets are there for that matter. The side effects, visual, nasal, and respiratory problems for that. Then alternatives are available for us, jute, hardwood flooring, organics, and for example, vinyl flooring. And in fact, we will be typically using what you call curtains in between the 2 beds in hospitals. And these days we have started using these curtains in our washrooms for that matter in big residences. The kind of toxic substance it emits is 108 volatile organic compounds are being used in that to manufacture those curtains for that matter. The outcomes are memory loss or memory reduction. We can say about learning skills are getting reduced, behavioral skills. There are alternatives, for example, PIVA, hemp. These are fiber. Hemp is a natural fiber for that matter. PIVA is also very less intoxic when compared with the plastic curtains. Then furnitures, household cleaning products, air fresheners, deodorants, scented candles, all are completely full of chemicals for that matter. Coming back to the hospital building, which we are typically where we have, what do you call healthcare design's role. When we talk about it, we talk about the enhanced health environment, talks about the stress reduction, safety, and high quality indoor spaces for the patients, caregivers, and families. The first principle of any building for that matters, it need to create a healthy environment and at the same time the occupants to be healed and thrive in their nearby surroundings. So this is a typical section of an IP room, what we can talk about it. The kind of material that is used is a paint on the wall surface, or a solid surface, or an acrylic surface for that matter. Then talking about the flooring, which is typically vinyl, what we use, and the furnitures, which is an upholstered sofa. Then talking about the insulations on the walls. Then talking about the wall coverings, be it an what do you call a plywood or with a paneling or a veneer for that matter. See the kind of toxic substances that is being used as a basic chemical or an ingredient material behind these materials. The kind of toxic substances or volatile organic compounds and antimicrobial surfaces which releases asthmagens and PBDs. Then phthalates, flame retardant chemicals are being used in the furnitures. Then wall coverings also emits a lot of phthalates for that matter. So we as architects and engineers should need to advise a client what kind of materials to be used in. Yes, everything comes with a cost. Obviously, any investor will always talk about, oh, what's my payback period? There's no payback period for this. It's a life of the users is that what we are giving back to them. So only commercial buying power can change the industry for that matter. If not for us, at least for the future generation. Thanks for it. Yeah, please.
That image. Go back to the previous slide of the hospital.
Yeah.
That room.
Can we please
Go back to that hospital room.
room, right?
Yeah, that's the one. Thank you very much, Anand, for such an insightful presentation on sustainable and healthy materials. In fact, that's a topic or something that we always look at the background because it is in the background. We never think about sustainable and healthy materials because we never give it much thought. It's behind us. But Anand has opened our eyes and told us the importance of keeping healthy materials in mind. And what was very interesting was, in fact, that slide, which has now disappeared, that room looked more like a hotel room, complete with the view as well. Nobody would believe that's actually a hospital room. But if we're coming up with hospital rooms, patient rooms that look like that, I think we're coming a very long way. So how do we crystallize all that we have discussed so far? We've spoken about healthy materials. We've spoken about energy efficiency. We even saw such a beautiful patient room just now on the screen. How do we sync all of this together and design a hospital that has all of these features and can really optimize and enhance the patient experience? As promised earlier, we have a panel discussion that discusses just this very topic, hospital design and planning for the future. Right? In this discussion, we're going to talk about many topics, several. Just a few of them will be, how do we measure the success of design intentions? It's all well and good to discuss, yes, we can do this, we can do that. This is a brilliant idea. That's an amazing idea. But how do we determine that these are all successful ideas? And how do we quantify that? We're also going to discuss how do we design hospitals to optimize patient experience, like what we saw on the slide just now. And very importantly, our country's long-term vision, 2050, sustainability 2050. What do we have to keep in mind if we want to be in compliance with that long-term sustainability vision? All this and much more will be discussed in the upcoming panel discussion. So please help me welcome on stage our panelists. I'll start with Mr. Lakshman TL, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Milan Fertility and Birthing Hospital. We also have Dr. Govindaya Yatish, who's the Unit Head of Apollo Specialty Hospital. We also have Mr. Hari Prasad Nair, who's the Director of Stat Consultancy. Please help me welcome on stage Mrs. Sujayanti Dasgupta, who's the co-founder and Director of Healthcare of Ward 4 Design. And our moderator for this discussion, please help me welcome on stage the very experienced person of immense stature, Dr. Nandakumar Jairam, who's the Chairman and co-founder of Shyamraj. So, my dear panelists, the last approximately half an hour to 45 minutes of this Healthcare 360 Summit has been a build-up to this panel discussion. We want to know what are the factors that we need to keep in mind for the hospitals of the future. Without any further ado, the stage is yours, Dr. Jairam.
Thank you. Am I audible? So, before you run away, how much of time have you given us? 40 minutes, okay. We will make sure that we do justice in those 40 minutes because I have with me, as all of you can understand, a very high-powered panel, and I'm sure the coming 40 minutes will be quite interesting and fruitful. We heard about planning of hospitals, but we must remember that hospitals already exist. So it's not a question of only planning with the new buildings. It is also understanding how existing buildings need to be modified in order that the end point of whatever we are discussing is achieved. This is my first submission. Also, I think over the last few years, substantial changes have occurred in our lives thanks to the virus, and the learnings from this need to be incorporated. What do I mean? What I mean to say is that we went through one debacle and there were learnings from it which need to be kept in mind and applied for the future. We do not know what kind of virus or what kind of epidemic is likely to come back and when. and how prepared we should be as far as hospital infrastructure is concerned in order to achieve this. And then there is investment in smart things. Today, that is the buzzword, but it's not just a buzzword, it is actually something that creates substantial efficiency. So, what can be done to ensure better outcomes, better patient care, patient safety, reduce costs, and above all, enhance the patient experience? Which brings me to the last point. I spoke about patient experience. Let's all agree and admit that today this is an important part of healthcare which did not see the importance in the yesteryears. While it is much more significant in private healthcare, I don't believe that it is not applied to any healthcare provision, because a person who is unwell needs to have an environment that is soothing, comfortable, and refreshing. Well, enough of me talking. Let me go on to this wonderful panel, and I will address the questions to the panelists. And as is appropriate, let me ensure that I start with the lady. So, Sujayanti, you go first. So, how do we measure success of design intentions? Is design the prerogative of administrators, physicians, investors, staff, or is it a collective effort?
Can you all hear me? Yeah, I suppose so. Okay, that is a little bit of a loaded question, and in some senses, slightly risky, but I will try to answer it as comprehensively as possible and as candidly as possible. Design success, why is it important to measure design success in the first place? The general idea is that hospitals have been designed for the longest period of time, and pretty much anyone who has worked in a hospital does know how do you design a hospital, and what else is there besides clinical efficiency, clinical pathways, and smooth flow and safety. These are the primordial considerations that have remained. And that is a fact. It is true that those are the cornerstones of any design activity in a hospital. But as the opening statement stated, a lot more has creeped into it. Now, when we say patient safety, we tend to address it as a very open-ended umbrella statement, or patient satisfaction, or patient centricity. What does that mean? Each one of us actually can come up with our own definitions. I mean, we've been patients, we've been on the other side of the table, and we can have our own definitions. But the first idea of patient centricity actually came about by this magnificent psychologist. His name is Dr. Roger Ulrich. He is a researcher and he focuses on healthcare environments. He did a very simple study. He took two sets of patient groups, similar age groups, similar health ailments, similar treatment lines of treatment, and put them in two separate rooms. The nurses that were tending to them was the same group that were tending to both of them. So he set up the study in that way. The only difference was that one of the patient groups was set in a room where there was no window, and another set placed in a room where there was windows. What they tracked, as we would in any hospital, is ALOS, pain medication requirement, how quickly can they be moved out post their surgeries, what is their sleep cycle. So 3 or 4 vitals that any healthcare scenario would measure. And just based on the simplest of experiment, it was discovered that the patients with the window actually required pain medication, reduced pain medication a day and a half, less than patients who were in that facility, in the neighboring facility. The other part of it was that A loss was almost, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a whole day, less than the patient with the windows. At the end of the day, we are human beings, no matter how technologically savvy we get. It is going to be very hard to divorce us from what we come from, which is nature, which is light, which is fresh air, which is environment. We talk a lot about, materials, and, we had a scintillating presentation prior to this about materials. It's really building smart healthcare for the future is not necessarily always looking to the future for newer materials, newer solutions. There were things we used to do right back in the days. There were times we used to build right in the days. And I'm happy to elaborate at a later time about what we can do in order to measure. But as an architect, I'll tell you, I did meet some of my fellow architects here. A lot of the onus, I'm sorry, lies with us. Because some of the things we have to do, or we can do, or can impact healthy environments is architecture 101. Simple things that don't cost any money, like the appropriate orientation of a building. Orientation will impact the light flow, will impact the impact on HVAC systems. What is the amount of heat you allow in? There are many, many ways to design it appropriately with what are the areas of a hospital that need light versus that don't require lighting. Can you place those appropriately towards a facade that does not require lighting, while patient rooms are oriented better where there is light and it's pleasant light. It's not on the southern side in this part of the world. So there's a lot of different ways to measure these, but we have to set 3 or 4 goals that are manageable and measure them at every point as to how we can improve it. So that I feel is a good starting point is common sense. Let's go back, let's start building with common sense first. It doesn't cost a dime to the clients, it doesn't cost a dime to the architects, to the builders, to anybody. The first starting point I would request common sense architecture 101.
Thank you. Thank you, Sujayanti. So perhaps I could conclude that what you're saying is it needs to be a collective effort. The architect has a significant part and role to play in it, and perhaps needs to put his or her foot down where it is necessary. And at the same time, it is important to keep in mind that patient safety and centricity wins ultimately. Thank you indeed. So let me now go to Mr. Hari Prasad Nair. Mr. Nair, in your opinion, once the hospital is built, post-occupancy, what would you believe is the way to evaluate that design and perhaps take learnings from it for the future?
Thank you. Post-occupancy evaluation is a way to improve my next design. It's the way to improve my next design. You look at it. You always say, okay, I've done a hospital, designed a hospital with such and such efficiency. So have you achieved it? Have you achieved it? Have you, are you maintaining it? So, for example, we have done a hospital and we promised that your power bill will be less than, say, 35 lakhs per month. So you go back, you check, verify, if it's crossing, where did it cross? How did it cross? So that is one way of looking on the maintenance point of view. The same hospital, again, on a patient on a patient front, we took input from the nursing department while designing the my labor room. There was a point which the nurse brought to us, saying that there is a back and forth movement from delivery room to my prepartum at times, because you are not able to engage the delivery, keep the delivery room occupied for more time. You need somebody else to come. So how many delivery rooms need to be there when I have X number of patients? So that was done, and now we did an evaluation post occupancy, and we realized that okay, fine, one more room was extra required. So that's a learning. That's a learning. So this is not universal. This is not universal. It changes from Bangalore to Tamil Nadu to any other state for that matter within India. So guidelines it's a broad thing to help us, but post occupancy evaluation both ways, from the energy point of view or on the patient point of view, has to be done properly. So that, and it has to be published, and it has so it becomes it helps the designer achieve the right things for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nair. That is indeed very interesting, and I must say that I had an experience of 17 years in Colombia, Asia, and I joined the organization before the first hospital was built, and during those 17 years, managed to build, start, and run 12 hospitals. The last hospital that we built was in Sarjapur Road in Bangalore, which is now Manipal Hospital, Sarjapur. And after we built that, we still had learnings. What I'm trying to tell you is, learning doesn't stop. It's a constant, it's a dynamic situation. And this is not just because of the design, but because the manner in which healthcare is delivered is also evolving constantly. All of us know that the ALOS today is probably 1/5 of what it used to be 30, 40 years ago. And efficiencies of movement were never looked at. Speed, where it is required, was also something that is important. So it is wise to say that learning never stops in this aspect of hospital infrastructure and building. Technology has occupied a significant part in our lives. And I will pause here to say, before I hand it over to Yatish, that I had the, I must say, fortune of sitting in a hospital, not as a doctor, but as a patient. And that is indeed very interesting. Technology was passed on to me, and although I'm older than any other member in this august audience, I can tell you that I dabble with technology. And I was amazed at the efficiency with which that technology helped me navigate the course of my own treatment and feel very satisfied at the end of it. And I'm also pleased to say that that technology was part of Yatish's organization. So Yatish, tell me how and what you would do to increase patient safety and outcomes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. I would thanks to everyone, and just before I getting into the detailed discussions, thing is nothing is ideal and change is the only constant, and we are all evolving every time, day in, day out. Yeah, thing is, particularly, we need to keep in any design, three fundamental things is what I always believe in. The first is patient centricity. In that patient centricity, we literally look at, as sir rightly said, is one is about their satisfaction, and the second thing is about their outcomes. We are designing hospital mainly. These are the two core purposes, what material we use, how it will be, and all, what will be the customer satisfaction, what is the social, the CSR or good Samaritan indicators, what comes out of it is it the ultimate end point. Before that, anything we do, we keep patient in the center, and for his ease and comfort, everything's are around. Thing is, there are stages where when the outcomes matters, you need to design everything keeping the patient and the doctor, the surgeon in mind. Whereas in the ward or in the care level, it will be always patient level and patient how best we are monitoring and how best this patient is connected to the treating doctor. So on one side, we need to design keeping the doctors in mind. On other side, you need to keep the patient in mind. On other side, you need to keep the entire staff and their ergonomics in mind. So it's a big challenge for all the architects and whenever they come. And at the same time, we all know we need to provide all that in that one, whatever this, it's 100 by 100 or it's within the space what's available. I was just talking to my team. They were telling me Dr. Yatish, you should be attending this session. So the reasons are we go for keeping the outcomes and risk mitigations in mind. We always look at how we can design the infrastructure with keeping the air exchanges, everything and ambient temperature and for the patient comfort and all that part. So I'll address two parts quickly. The designing of the AHUs, the temperature ambience, the outcomes and all those things. Particularly I say AHU, why can't we use it on the ceiling? So thing is, people says yes, wow, it can be sometimes the engineering team feel yeah, it is going to cause a lot of disturbance, like the same noise what we are hearing now. But thing is, challenges are there. Coming back to my core domain of patient safety, in that we need to use technology. It can be to diagnose the patient's problem, but at the same time keeping how safely we are keeping them in the hospital premises. So for that, a lot of technological evolutions are happening. Are we designing to the future needs? It can be a robotics, it can be the lasers, it can be combination of all these things. At the same time, the bandwidth, the internet infrastructure, what is required. And how are we building our redundancy mechanism for all these things? And retaining and archiving all this plethora of information, what is coming across, are we using it for our future purpose? So in the whole dimensions, we need to think in whatever we are doing. Reason because the technology is evolving so fast. Today I say my Jayanagar hospital is the smart hospital in Bangalore. Thing is, why you say, how you can say that? No, the thing is, see, yes, my patients are continuously monitored, continuously for 24 hours. Thing is, we are using technology. Thing is, which makes certainly patients much more safer. Thing is, we're going to able to pick up those subtle changes and we act on those subtle changes. I may say there are 0 code blues happened in my hospital in the last 3 months. Yes, how it's happened, it's all because of that. But most importantly, when you are designing, are you giving those Wi-Fi infrastructures, internet capabilities is another part as a part of the design thinking which all of us need to do. The last part I would say when we talk about sir is a surgeon, you want to be he has whatever is all his skill sets. Today, still he wants to operate means can he be sitting at a beach and operating on a patient? Technology says, yes, it's all possible. Thing is, are we giving that infrastructure, keeping that futuristic need? Reason because they want a particular doctor. I'm not endorsing that, but I'm just saying that is the need. Everyone wants the best known, famous, reputed. So these are the kind of things, but in conclusion, outcomes and efficiency are important. Keeping patient-centered approach is the fundamental thing is what I want to say, sir. Thank you.
So we've heard the last 3 speakers talk about patient centricity, technology, how it has to be a combined decision, and also about how we can learn from previous experiences. Now let's go to Mr. Lakshman from Milan, who's the Chief Executive Officer, and understand 2 things. One, whether he endorses the fact that it has to be a collective decision and that it has to depend on the doctor, the patient, the architect, and so on. And secondly, and perhaps an important aspect to understand, can cost and profitability be affected by hospital design?
Thank you, doctor. My personal view is 2 things. One is, if you look at Indian Railways, we moved from a broader gauge to meter gauge, from meter gauge to metro, and metro to almost now to an high-speed rail. But if you look at healthcare, we moved from a disease eradication, then we moved to the care. Now we move to, like what Dr. Itish was saying, to talking about patient experience or holistical care. Then now we are talking about, I feel that like what Dr. Jairam did about 17 years back in Colombia, Asia, I was very impressed the way he built Hibbard. What I termed in those days, it is called as a patient hub practices. What is patient hub practices was that it was always the hospitals were designed, meant at the whims and fancy of an investors. At that point in time, the investors were clinicians who had saved some money, had invested the serious money into this business by pledging their wealth, and did what is supposed to be done. Again, going back, I realized that it was just to relieve the pain of a patient. That was hospital was designed and built. But if you look at the next level, like what Columbia Asia did in the direction of Dr. Jairam, is that they gave so much of space for a corridor. They gave so much of space for customers or patients to sit and relax. That's the most thing which you did. I was very impressed on those point of view. Because I came from a non-healthcare background, that's those days, when I used to work for a bank, the bank had more comfort than the hospital patient. Patients were actually needed a more comfort to relax, or at least to stretch. Even today, you might be surprised to see some patients who are a little tired or sick, they just sleep on the floor in a government hospital, in a better paid hospital like private hospitals. Today we make them sleep on the chairs or the sofa, which is not convenient to any patients. We don't even take any efforts to tell them, yes, we have some 3, 4, 5 beds, which is reserved for you to relax till the doctor comes or till the doctor arrives to the institution. That's one part of one. The part two, my own personal experience as an economist, I realized why such things happens. Because most of these investors invest for a purpose of saying that I want to build a hospital because it was my school age dream, or my parents' wish, or my parents went through traumatic times, so let me build an hospital and serve that. That's not a purpose. The purpose should be that they should have a complete master plan in ideological thinking, saying that this is what it should be and this is what it meant to be. But if you look at the newer generation hospital, like started with Columbia Hospital, then followed with Apollo, then now Manipal and Aster, Cloud9, Cradle, and so on and so forth, they brought more of a kind of an experience in itself, saying that, hey, look, patient is not all about care, it's not all about outcome, it is all about the best thing you could experience. It's not only for you. Now it is all about your attenders, your friends, family, and so on and so forth. This is what I would like to conclude and complete my conversation. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you indeed, Mr. Lakshman. That was extremely clear and practical. So let me go back to Sujayanti. Now, 2050 is going to be on us in the not too distant future. I'm not sure whether all of us will be around, but anyway, some of us will definitely be there. So, we also need to understand how and what we can do to positively influence that sustainability, and at the same time, keep in mind the costs at which that comes. So, can I ask you to?
I think, you hit the nail on the head when you say, I don't know how many of us will be around to experience or, reap the fruits of India's 2070 commitment of net zero. But having said that, I think human beings have always strived at a collective and at an individual level to make lives of our future generations better. In our own families, we want our children to have better lives than we did. In our own communities, we want our community collectively to do better. in our own states, we feel the same way. Our state should be better than what it was 50 years back. Definitely at the national level, it is. So we are wired. We're naturally wired to strive for something that we may not be around to achieve. So that's a good news. That's a good starting point for us, actually. So I'm hopeful that we will actually be able to make these strides. Now, if I were to talk about, let's just zero back down to where my part of the world, which is infrastructure. I ended my last statement by saying common sense design. Not everything about healthy, future, sustainable is mired in any jargon or complicated. Sometimes it starts with basics of orientation. How do you orient? There are 3 pillars, I believe, that architects can have a great impact. And I keep saying that not because I say that we should really take on the mantle. This is nobody's mantle. This is for all of us to hold collectively. But each of us need to hold our side of the mantle high and well. So our responsibility starts with simply building orientation of how do we orient it right in our part of the world. We really need to then look at how are we building our hospitals. Somewhere along the way, we married up to the American suburban architecture or even Norwegian architecture, and we decided it was a good idea to wrap our buildings in glass all around. Somehow we thought that was a good idea for all of us. And we are seeing the consequences of it. Well, first we start off with deciding to wrap our buildings in glass. Oh, then let's talk about how do we prevent all the UV from coming in, okay? That's one step up for your cost. The next thing is, well, we're still attracting a lot of heat. How do we come up with smart systems to combat that? So we've kind of gotten very good at creating a problem and then kind of trying to solve it. And in some ways, we are putting the cart before the horse. So again, I go back to common sense. So let's start by letting less heat, which is the largest money guzzler in any hospital. And those are all passive systems. Those are what is the material you build with, how do you orient it. I mean, if you're going to use concrete today, which is the standard, the set standard for any construction that is not steel. It's pretty much the only construction material we go to, but it is also the largest CO2 emitter in the world. So yes, while no material is entirely safe, no material is entirely sustainable, you can always aim for less. There's lots of these materials today, like ashcrete, like hempcrete, that are converted to solid blocks and have the strength to go up several stories. The construction time is the same. The cost is not much because they are using recycled material in order to make those bricks for you. So what the previous presentation very aptly prompted out is we need commercial scalability, and this is where the C-suite and proprietors come in. This is a top-down effort. Sustainability cannot be looked as what am I spending in the next 2 years. That has to be tagged in. The math has to factor in what am I saving on my operating costs over the next 10 years. So there has to be an addition and a subtraction, and this cannot be done without the help of I'm looking at all of you because we have a very large C-suite panel here. It cannot be done without their blessing and their commitment to building healthier and building well. That is a part of patient safety as well. It's a commitment we make to our nurses and staff and doctors as we bring them into our hospitals. So that is one. The material you choose, and lastly, measure. Measure the success of what your design goals were. Did you meet it? If you didn't meet it, why? How can it be tweaked? There are companies that are actually doing this on a regular basis today. India is really, you don't need to look to the West anymore. India is really, really doing great at a lot of these startups and a lot of these companies that are, whether it's material, whether it's measurement, they're doing a great job of, helping us reach our sustainability goals.
Thank you. Let me come back to Mr. Nair and ask him to elaborate on how evidence-based hospital design can help us.
Evidence-based medicine, sorry, evidence-based design. It, like I learned this from the Center for Healthcare Science, CHT, and the Pebble project. Just going through and learned. I was very keen going through all that. So that's the starting point. So when Madam talked about window, it is in the 18th century evidence. No, 18th century there was a doctor who was started that. And then noise reduction is another thing which came out of evidence. The third was putting a locker for keeping the medicine in the patient room. That is again evidence. And like that, there was a lot of things which just happened, and those became guidelines, international guidelines out of evidence. It's again, regional. Evidence is also regional. So those regional evidences has to come from this part of the world also to have this published and practiced within this part of the world regionally. So another thing which is very interesting, which my person earlier on the sustainability and other thing all correlated with evidence. May ASHRAE journal has published an article. There was somebody in the US. What they have done is, in a hospital, non-clinical areas, why do you need so much of air changes? What are you trying to achieve out of air changes? You're trying to achieve particle reduction and some whatever your carbon dioxide plus some parameters as per design or as per standards. So what they did is they reduced and they measured and then they came back. And the whole study says that I don't need 2 air changes. 6.2 is the normal air change which is required in a non-clinical area. You don't need 6.2. At times you can reduce. There is a lot of energy saving which can happen. We are working on a software. We'll be coming out with a software within a month to have this measured and done for hospitals. So this kind of things, scientifically correlating evidence and then trying to share the data with the public. So that is a lot of implication on overall on the design process and on the infrastructural cost, which is.
Thanks indeed. So let me come back to Yatish. Now, we all have agreed and accepted that hospital design needs to be towards patient satisfaction. Can you briefly elaborate on specific areas of patient satisfaction that would be affected or affected by this?
Yeah. As Lakshman rightly said, how the evolution has happened. In each and every setup, when we walk into a facility, we ourselves will come to know that yes, it's a new swanky building and all. If you go to another hospital, it is literally crowded, jam-packed. There's no place for people to sit or stand. Patients are standing and waiting for the doctors. So that's the kind of scenarios what we see and we are coming across. At the same time, on other side, people say that why do patients need to wait? I want to see all my lobbies empty. Patient need to come on their dot time at 10 o'clock is their appointment, means patient will come 10 minutes prior, they do consult doctor and they'll go out. Why do you all putting such a big lobbies and making patients to, so all this, so thing is particularly our challenge are twofolds. On one side, you are it is once a patient is there attached with some doctor or some brand or some place, they are quite comfortable and going. It's because of their proximity, their neighborhood, location, and all those things. They may going to that particular hospital. In that way, over a legacy, the practice has been built, and the systems got or the space got congested. In such kind of environment, we need to see how to decongest that space, how can we give more room and more space, and what we can do, utilize the technology to decongest that part of it. At the same time, like, newer place, like, yes, they were designed for such kind of scenarios. We always take our example of Chennai Apollo to Bombay Apollo. Thing is, there's a huge difference. Like, we have built all our constraint, we put into that. But at the same time, as we have built it for, like, a 30-year-old hospital capacity, but at the first year one, like, you're going to literally, you're not going to run a viable hospital. So all those dynamics are there, sir. But whatever we do, we need to always think patient come first, and for his comfort level, we need to use technology. We need to invite, rethink, redesign, and always keep patient satisfaction as the first most priority, and don't make them to wait, don't congest your places.
Thank you, Yatish. And finally, to Mr. Lakshman, a very interesting question. As new geographical locations crop up to establish hospitals, very often the organization is or has the option to do two things. One, to go ahead and plan and build, as we've discussed, perhaps an ideal hospital, or to lease and modify an existing building, which is reality. Can you tell us the pros and cons?
My view is, if you look at India as a country, and if you look at the nation by 2050, okay, we have enough capacity. We have built almost in 2023, we have almost a capacity of 2050. If you look at any hospital balance sheets, be it Manipal to Apollo, because it's all public domain information, you may agree with me that they are about 60% capacity utilization. If you look at Manipal, especially other than Old Airport Road, they're less than 35-40% capacity. If you look at my own Milan, I'm only 35-36% capacity. But every second doctor who was so ambitious, since she thinks or he thinks that, okay, why should I work for someone? Let me build a capacity of my own. It is not realistic or economically viable to do so. It's good to be ambitious. It is good to be proactive, but you should also understand the economical sustainability in a long run. I had a fortune to work in a place called Hubli. Doctor, you believe me, the 135 doctors, all of them were DM, MCH, all from AIMS, BMC, KIMS, and so on and so forth. If one whistle, they could get at least 100 patients. In one whistle, they could get 100 patients. They came in one roof. The day they started, they realized they don't have working capital. They realized that one visual is not going to hear more outside the hospital premises because the vendors are not going to supply anything. The doctors or the employees and nurses will not going to work for them anymore free. Because there is a government system where you have to pay a statutory, you have to pay some minimum allowance or minimum wages, they could not fulfill. Therefore, they went on and on and on and on to build helipad by borrowing money from SBI. The biggest culprit in this whole process was the banker, because the banker wanted to lend more and more because his business was to earn more money. Unfortunately, all the doctors one day lost everything. They were almost, SBI came to their homes and said, please give all the jewelry of your wife, otherwise we will seal your institution. That's the tragic thing happened. Fortunately, there are great souls like Dr. Ajay Kumar, Dr. Nanda Kishore, Jairam and others who are very, at least, feel that they should support the clinicians, support the ecosystem, and so on and so forth. Then Dr. Ajay of HCG took that responsibility of writing a check to the SBI saying that don't touch these guys, we will take care and do something what is best we could do for them. Then we went to the S Bank, and S Bank gave us at lower rate of interest and so on and so forth. What my learning was that the overconfidence of doctors thinking that they could fill the 250-bed hospital in one single day was vanished. They invested, I would blame the architect and SBI along with them. because they advised them so much, they invested on till the 250th bed, including the air conditioning, the ventilators, everything was equipped, including the vessels in kitchen, doctor, which they could have bought it over a period of time. And they bought at the cost of interest. It's not that their own self-equity, it was a borrowed money. Just imagine an investment which was incorporated in the hospital and you're paying, it's not earning enough for you, you are actually paying interest to this. So therefore, at a government level, at the national level, they should actually have a master plan, which actually happens especially only in United Kingdom, not in anywhere in the world. They should actually benchmark, earmark a territory. Actually, in Karnataka also happens something called a CA site. That's called community sites, which they should earmark for healthcare, which could be sustainable. Otherwise, there is, in the previous regime, in Karnataka, there was always a private hospital versus government hospital. There's nothing called as a private hospital versus government hospital. It's all about care. It's all about how we are going to take care of this cost, reduce the cost, bring high quality care, and influence the world that this becomes a global market. Until unless we do not consolidate existing healthcare providers, believe me, this technology is going to overtake us. For example, if you look at a company like Practo, is much more valued than any of the hospital which we all have built. Okay? If you look at a company like Medfin, they don't have any infrastructure. Trust me, they do close to about, Practo does close to about 1,500 surgeries a month. Okay? So this kind of organizations or startups is going to overtake and ensure the costs are reduced. It's going to become unviable for them because they have ability to burn cash. Unfortunately, no healthcare owners or investors have ability to burn cash. So it is always wiser to consolidate them and make sure that it becomes profitable so that that money which profit turns into, they could invest like what Vijay was trying to say in the morning, saying that invest on research, invest on L&D, invest on healthy product like what Swaminathan was trying to say, and also encourage what Ms. Lakshmi was saying, the first speaker, about how can we influence the clinician to come forward and make sure this kind of opportunity to bring in change, like what Dr. Yatish was trying to say, experience, move from experience to hub, patient hub, so that the patient doesn't have to repeat the same mistake again and again. And believe me, the cost of healthcare is growing by 15-20% every year on year, which is not going to be sustained in the long run because more and more people are going to get poor, more and more government is going to subsidize, and healthcare will be in a situation like what we saw in pandemic time, where the government has to intervene and say they could have going to put a price cap saying that I should not charge so much, and so on and so forth. So this is what I would conclude, Dr.
Thank you indeed. And it is 40 minutes by the dot. I haven't exceeded by even a minute. So over to you.
Thank you. Can I ask my organizer, Suresh, do we have time for questions? At least one or two? Yes? So that we have, yes? No? No questions? One question. Okay. Any one question from the audience so that we have some interaction? At least we're running a little bit out of time, but we have at least one question from the audience. If there are no questions from the audience, yes, one over there, please. Very swiftly.
Hi, my name is Suraj, and my question is directed to you, madam. We have had a presentation earlier about the usage of materials and sustainability, and then you talked about sustainability. So is this sustainability factor, or probably sustainability versus the healthcare economics? Because in our personal experience, we know a client who designed a hospital who's having they got a IGBC platinum rating, but the same client who's now going to build they're not going by any kind of standards, just because they're just trying to increase the number of beds. Probably that will increase their EBITDA, and after a point of time, 2 or 3 years down the line, they might not have this hospital with them. Some other group might come and take it. So when we talk about sustainability on the OPEX, they have to wait for 10 years. But you know, these acquisitions over the years, is it affecting the sustainability factor? That's my question.
Hello. Okay. That's actually a very interesting question. When we started this journey, hospitals ownership didn't change as quickly as it does in this day and age of, especially with the PE funds that have made foray into healthcare. You're absolutely right about the concern that I think what you're asking is it worth investing in something that cannot be seen through the lifetime for it to see its complete benefit? Is that your question? Okay. So, yeah. So when I'll tell you, I have a few live examples of this in the western part of the globe. There are hospitals that Kaiser Permanente has gone on to acquire. We all know Kaiser Permanente. They have gone on to acquire. Now, Kaiser Permanente, as we all know, is one of the world's global leaders in sustainability measurement and putting out reports on how they are actually doing in their respective hospitals, even if it looks bad. Now, what they have adopted, the model they have adopted, is that any hospital we take over will be grandfathered in and will have to meet at least a certain number of our requirements of the sustainability measurements. So again, what I'm trying to say, if we reverse this now, and at the C-suite level, again, this goes back to proprietors, owners, doctors, physicians who own these hospitals, to say that if this is a sustainability effort you have started, here's why I will continue this journey. Because it still affects my operational cost. That still affects my bottom line. If nothing else talks, money talks. So if on the Excel sheet that works well, I don't see why somebody would not continue that journey or would not commit to continuing that journey. So I think it should be a part of that contract, the sale contract.
Thank you. On that note,
can I have one more question, please?
Oh, you're giving us one more? Okay.
One more, yes.
With you.
I know we are a little bit behind time,
He's
but I
impressed
have
with you.
Yeah, I have one anecdote / comment / question for not just the panel, but also directed towards the audience. And although we are a little behind time, I'm going to try and make this worth your while. So I was reading this interesting anecdote the other day related to healthcare. And I must confess that although I'm no healthcare expert, I think this will be of interest to you as well as the audience. The book was 70 Facts About the World. And one of the facts was, the context was, what is the greatest investment in the history of humanity? Anybody, any idea? This has nothing to do with the stock market, right? It is all to do with actually healthcare. What is the greatest investment in the history that we have had? Anybody, any idea?
Preventive healthcare.
Very close. In fact, I would say almost the same answer, just the words are slightly different. Exactly. Anybody, any ideas from the audience? Perfect. Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Jayanti. The greatest investment that we have ever made is infant vaccination. Tetanus shots, polio shots, hepatitis. All of the energy and vibrancy that we have and technology, which Dr. Nandakumar pointed out, is because we are living happier, healthier, stronger, and more vibrant lives. So with this prelude and context, if it is vaccinations that have improved our life, why are we talking so much about improving the hospitals? Is there a risk of actually aiming at the wrong target? In fact, even Dr. Nandakumar at the start pointed that out. We have all of this technology, and we already have hospitals. Why are we trying to improve all of these hospitals? Why can't we just be happy with what we have, when actually what has improved our life is infant vaccinations? Any comments from the panel on this topic?
While I entirely agree that wellness and preventive care is vital. There's no doubt about it. We must understand and remember that there are other diseases that afflict mankind, the cancers, the heart conditions, and so on and so forth. And you need a place, and you need capability. So hospitals are here to stay.
Thank you very much. On that note, thank you very much to our panel. You've been very interesting, a lot of insight, and I'm very happy that our audience was able to take up my short little anecdote/challenge. Thank you all very much. Please can we hear it for our panelists? So we have one more presentation before we slip into our networking break, and we are going to pivot at this juncture. All this while we've been talking about the external hospital design. Now we're going to be looking at the software systems. Our next speaker is Mr. Sandeep Variam, who's the cybersecurity advisor of the India and South Asia region from Palo Alto Networks. And as I pointed out, we've been discussing all of the hardware and external factors of the hospital, but what about the internal software systems? And how do we secure those systems? It's a very, very important topic. Can we please welcome on stage Mr. Sandeep Variam?